In Riverbrook, where winter painted the streets white, Jasmine Wilson walked through the biting cold. Her military jacket, warm but dignified, bore silent witness to her service. Tonight, the 60-year-old homeless veteran would treat herself to a proper meal at the Red Rail Diner. Jasmine's breath fogged as she whispered mantras from her military days. Check exits, identify threats, maintain situational awareness. Words that kept her alive through 3 tours in Afghanistan now helped her navigate life on Riverbrook's unforgiving streets. Her posture remained military straight despite circumstances. The jacket hanging from her shoulders, meticulously cleaned despite its age, bore a faded American flag patch. Her pants were frayed, boots cracked from years of wear. Yet dignity radiated from her bearing, contradicting her rough appearance. A retired Army colonel, Jasmine had earned 2 Purple Hearts and a Silver Star for valor. She commanded troops in some of the deadliest regions of Afghanistan, making critical decisions that saved countless lives. General Whitaker himself had praised her tactical brilliance. Life after service proved harder than combat. Her husband, Robert, died of pancreatic cancer 3 years ago. The VA repeatedly lost his paperwork, delaying treatments with administrative errors. By the time they sorted it out, it was too late. After his funeral, she spiraled. Missed mortgage payments led to foreclosure. The predatory lending company doubled her payments overnight. Then came the PTSD episodes, costing her the security job she'd found. Now, she was just another homeless veteran with a hard luck story. The bell above the Red Rail Diner's door jingled as Jasmine stepped inside. Warmth and the aroma of coffee embraced her. For a moment, she closed her eyes, savoring simple comforts after 3 days in the abandoned railway station, keeping warm with salvaged newspapers. When she opened her eyes, the diner had fallen silent. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Forks hovered above plates. A young mother pulled her child closer. An elderly man nervously pocketed his wallet. Jasmine had seen this reaction before. Too many times. She chose an empty stool at the counter with clear sight lines to both exits. Old combat habits. Just passing through, she murmured, looking for a hot meal. Rachel Miller had worked at the Red Rail for almost 2 years, saving for community college, while supporting her younger brother through police academy. At 23, she'd seen enough to recognize the signs of homelessness. But something about this woman's eyes, clear, alert, somehow ancient, made her hesitate. Rachel glanced toward the corner booth where Officers Barnes and Kyle sat nursing their coffees. They came every Tuesday like clockwork. Barnes caught her gaze, nodding subtly toward Jasmine. "Can I get you something, ma'am?" Rachel asked, sliding a menu toward Jasmine. "Coffee, please." "Black." Her voice was unexpectedly articulate, with the measured cadence of someone accustomed to command. "And the daily special, if it's not too much trouble." Rachel smiled slightly as she poured the coffee. "Meatloaf with mashed potatoes. Comes with green beans and a roll." "Perfect. Thank you." Jasmine wrapped her weathered hands around the warm mug. "Been a while since I had a home-cooked meal." From the corner booth, Officer Kyle snickered loudly. "Dumpster diving doesn't count as dining out, huh?" Officer Barnes chuckled. "Better count the silverware, Rachel. And check the bathroom after she leaves," Kyle added. "These bums always shoot up when they get inside somewhere warm." Jasmine didn't turn around. Only a slight tightening around her eyes betrayed her reaction. Officer Kyle stood, stretching ostentatiously before sauntering to the counter. Mid-30s with a linebacker's bill gone soft, he wore a perpetual smirk that made Rachel uncomfortable. His partner Barnes, thinner, sharper, with cold calculating eyes, followed closely. "Hey, Rachel." Kyle leaned against the counter, deliberately taking the stool next to Jasmine. "How's that brother of yours doing at the academy?" "Doing great," Rachel answered neutrally. "Top of his class in marksmanship." "Good man." Kyle nodded. "We need officers who understand what it takes to keep a community safe." He turned slightly toward Jasmine. "You know what that means, right? Keeping dangerous elements off the streets. The druggies, the panhandlers, the so-called vets who use their service as an excuse." Jasmine took a slow sip of coffee, her expression unchanged. "You'd be surprised," Barnes added. taking the stool on Jasmine's other side, effectively boxing her in. How many of these homeless heroes never saw a day of actual combat? But they sure know how to work the system, don't they, Kyle? Damn right, Kyle agreed. Real soldiers come home, get jobs, contribute to society. Not like these parasites. Rachel returned with Jasmine's food, setting the plate before her with trembling hands. Can I get you gentlemen anything else? We're good, Kyle replied, then reached for a sugar packet, tossing it onto Jasmine's plate. Here you go, sweetheart. Earn your keep. Dance for your dinner. Isn't that how it works for you people? A tense silence fell over the diner. Several patrons shifted uncomfortably. A teenage boy in the back booth began recording with his phone. Jasmine picked up the sugar packet between two fingers, turned in her seat, and placed it gently back on the officer's table. I earned my dignity in Kandahar, she said quietly, and I don't need to earn it again from you. You threatening an officer, vagrant? Barnes asked, voice dangerously soft. No, sir, Jasmine replied, turning back to her meal. Just having dinner. Kyle stood abruptly, stool scraping loudly against the floor. I think you need to leave. You're disturbing the peace. Jasmine remained seated. I've paid for this meal and I intend to eat it. Leave, Barnes commanded, also standing. Or are you refusing to comply with a lawful order? Rachel stepped forward. Officers, please. She's not causing any. Stay out of this, Rachel, Barnes interrupted. Unless you want trouble too. Your brother wouldn't appreciate his big sister interfering with police business, would he? The threat hung in the air. Rachel stepped back, face pale, but her hand slipped into her apron pocket where her phone was already recording. Kyle grabbed Jasmine's shoulder roughly. On your feet, now. Jasmine remained seated but met Kyle's gaze directly. Her eyes were calm but unflinching. I have the right to finish the meal I paid for. I have not broken any laws. Disturbing the peace, refusing to comply with an officer, threatening behavior. Barnes listed off. That's 3 strikes, lady. Around the diner, more phones appeared, silent witnesses to the escalating scene. 3 tours in Afghanistan. Jasmine said evenly. 2 Purple Hearts, a Silver Star, and I can't eat dinner in peace in the country I served. Kyle yanked her arm, nearly pulling her off the stool. Save the sob story for someone who cares, hero. As they began forcibly removing her, Jasmine looked directly at Rachel. If something happens to me, call General Whitaker at the Pentagon. Tell him Colonel Jasmine Wilson is in trouble. Rachel's eyes widened in disbelief as the officers laughed. Yeah, and I've got the president on speed dial. Barnes mocked. Let's go, Wilson. In Washington, D.C., retired General Harold Whitaker sat at his desk in a wood-paneled office overlooking Potomac. At 72, his hair had gone silver, but his posture remained military straight, his blue eyes sharp as ever. He was reviewing briefing materials for tomorrow's Senate Armed Services Committee meeting when a secure line rang. This is General Whitaker, he answered, his deep voice commanding even in these administrative surroundings. General, sir. The voice on the other end was young, female, trembling slightly. My name is Rachel Miller. I'm calling from Riverbrook. I was told to contact you if Colonel Jasmine Wilson was in trouble. And she is. 2 police officers just arrested her, and I'm afraid they're going to hurt her. Whitaker's expression shifted from polite interest to intense focus in an instant. Tell me everything, he commanded, already reaching for another phone on his desk. As Rachel recounted the events of the diner, Whitaker's jaw tightened. When she finished, he was on his feet, pacing the length of his office. Miss Miller, you did exactly the right thing. I want you to send me that video recording immediately. My aide will text you a secure number. After ending the call, Whitaker stood motionless, his mind 20 years in the past. The heat had been oppressive that day in Kandahar. Dust coated everything as insurgents pinned down his convoy. An RPG hit his vehicle, trapping him beneath the burning wreckage. He'd ordered his team to fall back, to save themselves. But Colonel Wilson had refused. No man left behind, sir, she'd said, blood streaming down her face from shrapnel wounds. Not today. Not ever. Under relentless enemy fire, she'd organized a counterattack, created a distraction, and personally carried him to safety. Then she'd gone back, rescuing 3 more wounded soldiers before air support arrived. Whitaker picked up a secure line and dialed a number from memory. "This is General Whitaker. Authorization code Sierra Echo 94 Alpha." A pause. "I need an immediate intervention at the Riverbrook Police Department. One of our decorated veterans is being held there under questionable circumstances." In the holding cell of Riverbrook Police Station, Jasmine sat with her eyes closed, her breathing measured and even. The concrete bench was cold beneath her. Her ribs ached where Kyle had accidentally struck her during processing, but her mind was elsewhere. She'd learned meditation during her recovery at Walter Reed. The doctors called it a coping mechanism for PTSD. Jasmine simply called it survival. In her mind, she walked familiar corridors of a palace in Kandahar that her unit had secured. Each turn memorized, each doorway noted. The mental exercise helped her stay focused when reality threatened to close in. She didn't open her eyes when the door at the end of the hallway banged open, didn't react when hurried footsteps approached. Only when the cell door clanged open did she finally look up. 2 individuals stood there, a man and woman in crisp dark suits, each holding up a badge. "Colonel Wilson," the woman said, her tone respectful. "You're free to go." Jasmine stared at them for a long moment, then slowly rose to her feet. "That was faster than usual," she remarked. "Special Agent Daniels, Department of Defense Internal Affairs." The man introduced himself. "This is Special Agent Morales. We're here at the direct request of General Harold Whitaker." A ghost of a smile crossed Jasmine's face. The old man came through. "Yes, ma'am, he did." Agent Morales confirmed. "We've already spoken with the sheriff. You're being released immediately with all charges dropped." They led Jasmine through the station, past the booking desk where Officer Barnes was arguing heatedly with the sheriff. "You can't just waltz in here with federal badges," and Barnes fell silent when he saw Jasmine walking past, flanked by the agents. "Officers Barnes and Kyle," Agent Daniels said coldly, "the Department of Defense will be conducting a full review of your arrest procedures and use of force against a decorated combat veteran. In the meantime, I suggest you both review the constitutional rights of citizens, regardless of their housing status." The sheriff, a heavy-set man with a perpetually worried expression, nodded vigorously. "I assure you this incident doesn't reflect our department's values. These officers will be placed on administrative duty, pending a full internal review." Barnes's face had gone pale, while Kyle stared at Jasmine with naked hatred. She paused briefly as she passed him. "The truth doesn't need force to stand," she said quietly. Then she continued walking, her back straight, her head high. Outside, the snow had stopped, leaving the world silent and white under the glow of street lamps. Jasmine breathed in the cold air, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. The DOD agents offered her a ride, but she politely declined. "I prefer to walk, but thank you." 3 days after Jasmine's release, Ava Washington sat across from her in a small coffee shop 3 towns over from Riverbrook. At 34, Ava had built a reputation as one of the most formidable civil rights attorneys on the East Coast, specializing in cases of police misconduct. "What happened to you is part of a pattern, Colonel," Ava explained, spreading documents across the table. "Since receiving your case from General Whitaker, I've uncovered disturbing evidence." Ava pointed to a map marked with red dots. Each of these represents a complaint filed by a homeless veteran in Riverbrook in the past 2 years. "Notice anything?" Jasmine studied the pattern. "They're all in areas slated for redevelopment." "Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting." Ava slid forward a document with the letterhead of a company called Falcon Core. This private development firm has been buying properties throughout these areas at remarkably low prices. Rachel, who had joined them after finishing her shift, leaned forward. "What does this have to do with Barnes and Kyle?" "Everything." Ava displayed bank statements. "Officers who clean up these areas receive bonuses through shell companies. Barnes and Kyle are among the highest paid. They specifically target homeless individuals, particularly veterans, to drive them out of areas Falcon Core wants to develop." Jasmine's expression remained calm, but her eyes hardened. How deep does this go? Captain Brick, who runs internal affairs, oversees the whole operation. They call themselves the Shield Men, officers who protect the community by removing undesirables. Rachel's brother Jameson, a police cadet, confirmed the allegations when he joined them later. Brick uses these operations as training examples for cadets from Riverbrook. He explained nervously. He calls it the real education, how to write reports that protect the department while serving justice. That evening, as news of the investigation spread, Rachel was fired from her job at the Red Rail Diner. The official reason was excessive absences, but the message was clear. Those who challenge the system would face consequences. "They're trying to make an example of you," Jasmine told her as she helped board up Rachel's broken window after someone threw a brick through it. Intimidation is their first response. It means you've got them worried. Jasmine's story spread rapidly through social media. Rachel, now unemployed but undeterred, created powerful videos documenting not just Jasmine's experience, but those of other veterans targeted by the Shield Men. The first video featuring Colonel Wilson's story was uploaded on Thursday evening. Rachel explained to the growing team of supporters gathered in Ava's temporary office. By Friday morning, it had over 1 million views. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Local news stations picked up the story. National veterans organizations issued statements of support. Hashtag Justice for Jasmine began trending on social media. Community members who had once looked away now spoke out. The teenage boy who had recorded the initial confrontation at the diner came forward with his footage. Other witnesses provided statements. Former employees of the Red Rail Diner revealed the owner's instructions to call police whenever homeless individuals entered. Pressure mounted on local officials. Judge William Harmon, who had expunged multiple excessive force complaints against the Shield Men, agreed to a meeting with Ava. "Brick his files on everyone," he admitted, hands trembling as he poured himself a third whiskey. He calls them cop files, dirt on judges, council members, business owners, anyone who might oppose him. As evidence mounted, several officers broke ranks. Officer Barnes, facing termination, offered to testify against Captain Brick in exchange for immunity. "The walls are closing in," Ava told Jasmine one evening. "The truth is coming out." Jasmine nodded, but her expression remained troubled, which makes them more dangerous than ever. Brick won't go down without a fight. Her words proved prophetic when Barnes was found dead in an alley behind the police station the next morning. The official report claimed an apparent drug overdose, but the missing police wire he'd been wearing when meeting with Brick told a different story. "They're cutting loose ends," Jasmine said grimly. "The question is, how many more will die before this ends?" 6 weeks after the incident at the Red Rail Diner, Colonel Jasmine Wilson stood before a joint congressional committee on police reform and veteran homelessness. The hearing room was packed, cameras broadcasting her testimony nationwide. Despite her discomfort with public speaking, she stood tall in a donated Navy suit, her military bearing evident in every movement. On her lapel, she wore her silver star, not from vanity, but as a reminder of who she was beyond her current circumstances. "I stand before you not as a hero," she began, her voice steady, "but as a witness to the suffering of those who serve their country only to be abandoned by the systems meant to support them, a witness to corruption that values profit over human dignity." She detailed not just her own experience, but the systematic targeting of homeless veterans across the country. She explained how the Shield Men had operated with impunity, how development companies had profited from human suffering, and how police departments had become enforcement arms for corporate interests. "What happened in Riverbrook is not isolated," she continued. "It's happening in cities and towns across America. Veterans who fought for freedom abroad now find themselves fighting for basic dignity at home." She called for comprehensive veteran housing reform, mandatory oversight for police departments, and legal protection for whistleblowers. She read a list of 23 veterans who had perished on Riverbrook streets over the past 5 years. "Their deaths were not inevitable," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "They were the result of choices. Choices made by individuals who decided some lives matter less than others, and choices made by institutions that looked away rather than confront uncomfortable truths." When she finished, the room erupted in a standing ovation. The committee chairman immediately called for emergency funding for veteran support programs and promised swift legislative action on police reform. 1 year after Jasmine Wilson first walked into the Red Rail Diner, Riverbrook had transformed. The small town that had once systematically persecuted its homeless population now stood as a national model for veteran support and community integration. A large crowd gathered in the morning sunshine for the dedication of the Wilson Veterans Community Center, a renovated factory building that now housed transitional apartments, mental health services, job training facilities, and a medical clinic specifically designed for veterans' needs. Today we celebrate not just a building, Rachel addressed the assembled crowd from beside the podium, but the birth of a movement. A year ago, one woman refused to be silenced. Today, thousands stand with her, demanding dignity and justice for those who served. In the front row sat General Whitaker, now serving as a special advisor to the President's Commission on Veteran Homelessness. Beside him, Ava smiled proudly, her work on the Shield Men case having culminated in landmark legislation, the Dignity Act, providing unprecedented protections for homeless individuals nationwide. The Shield Men investigation had expanded beyond Riverbrook. 11 similar networks had been disbanded across the country. 8 police chiefs had resigned or been indicted. Falcon Corps faced multiple federal charges, its predatory practices exposed in congressional hearings. Officers Barnes and Kyle had faced different fates. Barnes's death remained officially classified as an overdose, though few believed it. Kyle had been convicted on civil rights violations and was serving 5 years in federal prison. Captain Brick had fled the country, but was apprehended in Panama. Now he awaited trial on charges ranging from conspiracy to murder. For Jasmine, the greatest victory wasn't in the headlines, but in the faces of veterans who now had hope and homes. Through donations and community fundraising, Jasmine now lived in a modest home near the Veterans Center. Though simple, it represented stability she hadn't known since before her husband's death. On her mantel stood photographs. Her husband in uniform, her unit in Afghanistan, and now, new friends made during the past year's struggle. "You changed everything," Rachel told her one evening as they sat on Jasmine's small porch. "We all did," Jasmine corrected gently. One voice can start a chorus, but change requires harmony. As twilight settled over Riverbrook, Jasmine watched young veterans walking confidently toward the community center. Their straight backs and raised heads told her everything she needed to know about victory's true meaning. "If my story touched you," she whispered to the fading light, "imagine what your own might do. Comment below with the word respect if you've ever stood up for someone who couldn't stand up for themselves."